All right, hello guys. Welcome back to our weekly predictions for the NFL. Moving on to week 10. I'll tell you right now. So, to begin with, we had essentially the same pick for everything. The only ones that we picked differently was the Chargers game, and this week was a whack week of football. I don't think anyone really expected most of what happened. Uh We'll start on Thursday night and start with the Falcons and Carolina. I mean, I think this is a game that could have gone either way. There was no real they played a couple weeks ago and that game was outstanding.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, but this game I didn't get to see much. I didn't get to see really any of the game, but I mean the Panthers ended up pulling out on top. I'll tell you what though, I am quite angry because last week I didn't even realize Cordell Patterson was healthy again, so he was sitting in my IR spot and scored like 20 points. And so this week I'm like, oh, I'm going to start him again. Starts with Dante Foreman on my bench. And Dante Foreman scores 19 and Cordell Patterson scores 3. So that wasn't ideal. But Panthers pull out the win 25-15 over the Falcons. Only thing is, I got to ask is, are they just deciding to start PJ Walker over Baker Mayfield?
I don't know because I thought he was back.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield looked like he was padded up and ready to play if he needed to.
Yeah,
and
I mean, he was
I know he played a little bit
his
last week.
lineman without a helmet on.
And I know he played a little bit last week, but it didn't look like he was. But he didn't come into the game at all. It was PJ Walker the entire time. So
yeah.
I mean, I don't think Carolina really cares either way. They're 3-7. The odds of them making the playoffs are low, and even if they do, they're not going to do anything. They probably just want to look for a quarterback, try to rebuild. So, I mean, I don't think they really care, but it makes sense. Baker Mayfield's not that good. He hasn't been playing great this season, so PJ Walker, I think it's a pretty good story for him, but not much really going on there in Carolina. Moving on to the first, I would say this was a semi-surprising game, not too terribly surprising though. The Bucks pull out a win over Seattle. They shut down Kenneth Walker. I mean, that's really what won them the game was Kenneth Walker only had 17 yards rushing on 10 rushes and 55 yards on 6 receptions, but he didn't do anything. Kenneth Walker was shut down for the most part. He had no touchdowns. Geno Smith, 23 for 33, 275 yards with 2 touchdowns to Tyler Lockett and Marquise Goodwin. But, I mean, nothing really standing out there. The Buccaneers, though, looks like they might actually be making a playoff push now.
Yeah, the difference, I think, between these past 2 games and the games before were the Bucs have been able to really get the run game going. Before they were throwing the ball sometimes upwards of 50 times, which even for Tom Brady, that's still a lot. But Rashad White had 22 carries for 105 yards, and I'd say that's the biggest reason for the victory. The Seahawks, Geno Smith played good, but they could not get the run game going, and that was the deciding factor in this game.
Yeah, Rashad White really trying to get going, and which is surprising. Like, there's nothing wrong with Leonard Fournette. He's just kind of falling off. Like, it looks like they're starting to move into the hands of Rashad White as opposed to trying to keep Leonard Fournette going. Now, this one, we forgot to do our game of the week last week, but this right here was the game of the year. The Vikings at the Bills. If anyone who watched it, I think we can all agree, even if I wasn't betting on the game. I am not a Vikings fan or a Bills fan, and that game had me screaming and running around because this game was just so wild. And like, I was watching it with a bunch of other people too, which, upped the energy a little bit, but this game was absolutely insane. The Bills are leading 27-10, and at that point, I was visiting a friend at college. When they were up 27-10, I just looked at everyone in the room and I go, Vikings are going to come back and win this. I didn't entirely believe it, but I was like, you know what, it'd be pretty cool to see it happen. And the fact that they did end up coming back, Josh Allen sold. I mean, he threw, I want to say 2 or 3 red zone picks. He
He threw
fumbled in the
two.
end zone at the end of the game. I mean, Josh Allen sold so much at the end of the game, but this was a heck of a game. Did you watch any of it?
I watched part of it. There's at least like two catch of the year candidates.
Justin Jefferson. Oh my gosh.
I don't know how he caught that. If you haven't seen the catch, go watch it. I can't even do it
I
justice.
can I'll explain it a little bit. So basically, I mean, the I don't know who the defensive back was for the Bills, but he had his hands on the ball. Like he had both hands on the ball, and Justin Jefferson went up with one hand and essentially just ripped it out of his hands as they were going down to the ground. I mean, that might be, I think multiple people are saying this too. That might be the best catch in NFL history. I mean, before you were looking at the Odell catch, the 3-fingered catch, but I think the fact that you go up on a professional athlete and steal the ball out of his grasp with only one hand. And I mean, Justin Jefferson isn't exactly the biggest guy. He's not the strongest guy,
No.
but I mean, just the fact that he's able to do that was insane. I think that might be the best catch in NFL history.
Um,
And the
I,
Stephon Diggs catch. I presume that's the other one you were talking about?
yeah.
Yeah.
That could be in terms of vision, like in terms of like overall importance. I would still say the Immaculate Reception will forever be the best play in terms of how important it was. And I'd still think that's the greatest play and possibly catch in NFL history. But if you're just looking at it in terms of how
Like
impressive it
strictly,
is,
yeah.
the Jefferson
Skill.
one that's utterly ridiculous.
I gotta be honest though. I mean, the Immaculate Reception didn't even cross my mind when you when I was we were talking about it, and we were talking about the David Tyree helmet catch and the Mario Manningham sideline catch in the Super
Yeah,
Bowl, and
that
then
was a great one.
Odell.
Odell's.
You got that one.
The Terrell Owens catch against the Packers.
But yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about the Immaculate Reception. So yeah, that's another good one up there. But definitely, like, just based off of skill and impressiveness, like, I think that might be up there in one of the
Yeah.
best. But I mean, if you didn't watch this game and there's some way you think you could go back and rewatch it, I would. That was an amazing game.
And then you had Josh Allen fumbling at the 1 yard
Which,
line.
dude, at that point, I think you have to trust your defense, because there was a minute left in the game. You have to trust your defense, take a knee in the end zone, take your safety. Which, okay, now we're saying this in hindsight. Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
In the game, had Josh Allen, held that snap, got a yard or two upfield, and then they were able to take a knee in the actual field of play and not get a safety and close out the game, then we're not talking about it like this. But since he
Yeah.
fumbled in the end zone, now that's when we're saying, you got to take a knee, just take your safety and punt the ball away and trust your defense. So, I mean, it's a tale of two stories. But with the way that it went out, like I said, hindsight's 2020. But with the way that it went out, you'd probably think that kneeling in the end zone probably would have been a better alternative.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Josh Allen sold in this game a ton. I think that's the biggest story of this game, and the reason the Vikings came back was the fact that he throws 2 red zone picks, and then the Vikings drive down. They get close to the end zone and can't put it in on 4th down. Especially after that, when your defense comes up with a four down stop on the 1 yard
goal line stand.
Yeah, you gotta trust your defense there. The one last piece I did want to bring up before we move on from this game was when the Vikings go up 30-27 and they give the ball back to Josh Allen. I said as soon as they gave it back, there's way too much time on the clock, because I mean, Josh Allen, he did his best impression of Pat Mahomes, and I want to say they went down the field in 30 seconds and scored
It was something like that.
got the field goal. Oh, did you see that Gabe Davis catch, quote unquote catch?
Yeah,
I don't think that was a catch. Which, I mean, they can't call a challenge flag, and the Bills did a good job of getting right back up to the line and getting a playoff, but that wasn't a catch. If they had time to go over that and look over that, that's getting reversed, and maybe that game doesn't go into overtime. But I mean, overall, what a game. That was just an insane game to watch. Going on to the Detroit Chicago game. Justin
Another
Yeah, this was
What
another.
is going on with the Bears? They're having these really close, high-scoring games after one of the worst Thursday night football games we've
Yeah.
ever seen against
Justin
us.
Justin Fields has now. You want to talk about Lamar being a running back? I think we need to shift that conversation over to Justin Fields. Justin Fields, in the past 3 weeks, I believe, has had 150 yards rushing in each of his last 3 games. I know he had it this week and last week,
He
and
had
then
147 yards this week.
oh, okay, so just under 150. Last week, I believe, was the game where he had 179, and then the week before that, he had 151. So he's averaging just over 150 yards per game in the last 3 games. That's a running back. That's a running quarterback right there. And I mean, it's not even like he's a dual threat quarterback because he's not passing well. Do you know how many games Justin Fields has over 200 passing yards this season? One game.
That was close.
He had 208 passing yards. I forget what week it was, but it was earlier in the season. He had 208 passing yards, and that is the only game that he has had 200 passing yards this season. So, I mean, it's not like he's a dual threat quarterback like Lamar did, like Lamar adjusted to, and but Justin Fields, I mean, he's running all over the place. I picked him up in our fantasy league actually because Joe Burrow was on a bye, and I mean, now I'm struggling on who to start. Justin Fields plays Atlanta, and Joe Burrow plays Pittsburgh, which we'll talk about in this upcoming week. And I'm at a struggle on who to start because Justin Fields is just running out of his mind, you know. But I don't know. Yeah, that it was a close game with Detroit. I'm surprised Detroit pulled it out. Aiden Hutchinson causing an interception at the end of the game for them to close it out. The Lions need to fix DeAndre Swift. I mean, he scored a touchdown this season, but he's still hurt.
I don't know what is going on there. You've seen like he's been playing the past few weeks, but he hasn't really been doing anything. And how about the most recent Bears pickup, Chase Claypool, run one reception for 8 yards?
Now, that could also just be a fact that he's not quite acquainted with the
Yeah, and I think
playbook.
it's also down to the fact that the Bears aren't really a passing team. We
That
saw
too.
it against Washington that Fields will continuously miss wide open throws. So it's not like you can really rely on him to be a consistent passer. So I think that's part of it as well. But you'd still want him to do better than one reception for 8 yards.
Yeah. Going on to another close game. This one was I would say it was almost an upset. I don't know if the Titans were favored in this game or not, but Titans were down, I want to say 17-0 at one point, and ended up,
They were
or
down
10-0,
10-0.
10-0, excuse me. Yeah, they were down 10-0 to the Broncos at one point, and I was like, dude, no way that the Broncos are going to pull out this win and beat the Titans. And then the Titans came back. They switched it up, and the game-winning touchdown came off of a flea flicker, which who knows the last time we saw that. But yeah, Titans hold off the Broncos. I mean, the Broncos defense still insanely good. I didn't see what Derrick Henry did though.
19 carries for 53 yards.
I
and
mean,
overall-
2.8 yards per carry. I'd say that's shutting down Derrick Henry. If you're
That is, but the Broncos defense has actually been pretty good.
The Broncos
this
defense
year.
has been good all season.
Yeah, but we saw a change in offensive kind of system for the Titans. Ryan Tannehill had a really good comeback game. Nick Westbrook had an amazing game, 5 receptions, 119 yards for 2 touchdowns. So
63 of those came off that flea flicker.
yeah, the Titans have shown that their offense is not as one-dimensional as seen in the past. Now that they have Tannehill back.
No surprising win here for the Chiefs. The only thing I did want to mention is the Jaguars had the ball with 2 minutes left in the half, down 20-0, and they had a chance to cut the lead in half by half with 2 minutes left. They got the ball back twice, and they ended up only scoring. They ended up only scoring a touchdown, but I mean, you got to cut that. You got to get that lead cut in half when you can. They don't end up doing so, but Chiefs take handle of the Jaguars. Kadarius Toney had a good game. Did you see the clip of him adjusting his gloves right before he went up and mossed two Jaguars corners?
I did not.
He's running his route, and as he's running, as the ball's in the air, he adjusts his gloves and just goes up and clink, I'll take that, and gets down inbounds. So Kadarius Toney comes out. He has a good game. Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins run over the Browns. Browns desperately miss Deshaun Watson. 2 more weeks until he comes back. But Jeff Wilson had a pretty solid game, and so did Raheem Mostert. They both played pretty well for the Dolphins, but no surprising win there. The Dolphins' offense is really potent. They have a really good offense.
I think they're going to be a threat in the AFC, but I'm surprised that the Browns didn't go to Nick Chubb more. 11 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. He was averaging 5.7 yards a carry, so I don't understand why they didn't give him the ball more. I mean, how their offense is currently built, it's not going to be a high volume passing offense.
They were playing from behind essentially the entire game. They went up, they scored on their first drive, made it 7-0, and then after that, Miami just took hold of the game. Miami then the next time that the Browns scored, it was 24-10. So I mean, Miami just took hold of the Browns defense, and obviously, if you're trying to put up points fast, you can't really use the run game as much as you want to. So I mean, that makes sense on why Nick Chubb wasn't as much of a factor there. Giants at Houston, Houston at the Giants. The Giants win a close one here. It was essentially a one-score game the entire game. There was no point where the Giants really pulled away. So Houston made that a game. I think the Giants are probably the closest thing to a fluke in the NFC that there is. I don't really like the way their team is built. And I mean, I think they're kind of screwing themselves out of a decent pick this season. I mean, they're winning games, but I don't think they're a good team, if that makes sense.
I mean, but in terms of biggest fluke in the NFC, I'm not sure I agree with that because they're winning games we just said this about the Eagles last week that you can only beat who's in front of you.
And I agree. No, I totally agree with that. You can only beat who's in front of you, but just for example, the Eagles and the just looking at the 3 NFC East teams who are dominating right now, the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Eagles, all 3 of them, they essentially have the same schedule. The only difference between those 3 is the Eagles and the Cowboys dominate opponents. The Giants do not. The Giants have not been dominating.
Not how their
opponents.
team is built, though. And the Eagles, I mean, what teams have you really dominated in terms of the entire game?
Before this week, essentially all of them. They went up 20-0 on the Cowboys, who up to that point in the season were a top 3 defense in the league. I would say that's dominating.
But they didn't have. But if you look, what I mean is throughout the entire game, understand that if you're up, you don't really have to do as much. But we've seen that the Eagles have been in some close games. We saw this previous week. They lost. But if you look at the Giants, they're not really built as a very high potent offense. They're going to dominate time of possession. They're going to run all over you, and they have a great defense. So they're kind of built like
I could agree with that more.
I just think the Bucks team that won the Super Bowl, the early 2000s Ravens. That's how they're built. They're not going to really dominate opponents, and I don't think that's the sign of a good team is dominating opponents. They're winning games. What more can you say?
I think. Let me put it this way. I think the Giants are a first-round bounce. The odds of them getting that first-round bye are very slim. I mean, the Eagles and the Vikings are both 8-1 and just going crazy right now in their schedule. So the odds of them getting a first-round bye, very slim, which means I think they're going to be a first-round bounce. I don't think. Yes, I mean the Giants are playing well, but what I'm trying to say is, so this is where you see that struggle because when you have a worse record, you have a worse schedule, and so I think they're benefiting from their bad schedule, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. Obviously, you got
Yeah,
to
you
do that. You
could.
got to take
The
advantage.
same argument is for
Same
the whole
thing for the
NFC East.
Eagles, but I'm saying the Giants aren't built as well for like the future. They don't have
I
that team that they're gonna. They don't have a team that they can continue to trust for years to come. What I'm trying to
I
say is
just I
basically
dis I disagree with that. I disagree with that because they have a really
Saquon's
young coach. They have a
Saquon's
young
on a go
Yeah,
ahead.
Saquon's still young. Daniel Jones is proving or showing that he can just do enough. He can do enough. Their defense is great, and with how exciting things look, Saquon looking, if this is able to continue, they'll be the Giants is still, I think, a very like a great destination for free agents, and it's probably more attractive than a lot of other places because it's the big market. So I'd say I disagree with your point there because it's New York. They have a great defense, which is I still think is pretty relatively young because you have guys like Kayvon Thibodeau. So
Their
I
defense is
think
good. I will give you
yeah, their
that.
defense is good. Their
Their
offense. I
offense.
mean, if you were to add like a wide receiver or two to the offense, I think it'll be decent enough because it doesn't really have to be
I was
like a lights out offense.
I'm saying okay. So right now, just looking at their offense for the future right now, looks like nothing. Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard have struggled with injuries their entire career. Kenny Galladay hasn't lived up to his contract at all. Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones both on contract years this year. They've done a decent job with the O line. They have two bookend tackles who are playing really well this season. But I think I think they don't. I don't think they want to go to the future with Daniel Jones. Now, I may be wrong, but I feel like they might be hurting themselves winning games because I feel like with a good quarterback, they could be a lot better. But with the lack of quarterback play, because like you said, Daniel Jones is just doing enough. Now, that obviously that's working right now, but I think for the future you need a quarterback who can do a little bit more than just enough. Teams who win the Super Bowl, aside from, and maybe this is something where they do have that 2000 Ravens situation or
The
the
Bucks
Buccaneers,
team, the
but
Jets almost did it.
even the Buccaneers, I mean Tom Brady isn't a quarterback who just does enough. When you need a comeback,
I'm not. I'm talking about the Brad Johnson Bucks. I'm not talking about the ones that won
okay,
recently.
cuz I mean the recent ones was also carried by their defense
You know,
for the most
well,
part.
I
Maybe not
think that
carried, but their
even if we're
defense
more
was
equal, but
definitely
that
was big.
Bucks team with that had Rondé Barber, Derek Brooks, that was a defensive team.
And I would agree. So I mean, maybe, but I feel like most of the time to win a Super Bowl, you need a quarterback who is a little bit more than can just do enough. That's just my personal opinion.
I
Uh,
mean, but Brad Johnson and Trent Dilfer did it. So there is
there's proof of it happening,
yeah,
but
there's proof that like all it takes is for a quarterback to have a really good playoffs or a really good season. I mean, that's how Washington won it. Doug Williams had a really good postseason. That's about it. Mark Rippon had one really good season where he won MVP and we went 14-2. After that, you never heard of him again. So it's possible to do it, but say something drastic would happen because Lamar Jackson is coming up
yeah,
this is his contract.
imagine they sign Lamar and Saquon. Oh my gosh.
Or imagine, say, I mean, if Washington, like we get a new owner, I've heard somebody say that they should try and get Sean Payton. Lamar can really transform a few teams out there into Super Bowl contenders. Washington, the Giants, something like that could really transform that team.
Moving on to the Pittsburgh New Orleans game. We both picked New Orleans. I didn't get to see much of this game. I saw Pittsburgh did win 20-10. I thought that New Orleans would be able to handle them a little bit better, but
I'm not, because I never really thought New Orleans was that good of a team to begin with.
I
So
don't think they're
always,
good, but I think they have
um,
better talent. But I mean, that was just those were two really underperforming teams. So I'm not too surprised at that outcome either way. Jeff Saturday gets his first win as an NFL head coach.
I think that's one of the most shocking things that's happened this week. And Jeff
Uh,
Saturday gets a win over the Raiders with Matt Ryan. It's his first ever time coaching at the NFL level. Forget like as a coordinator, he's his first game as an NFL coach is as a head coach. So that's
and
shocking. Jonathan Taylor had a
I was
great
just about to
game.
say, what do you know? The running game.
Yeah, who would have thought that that's the answer? But Derek Carr, his job is, I think, at this point in the mud. Yeah, I don't know what's happening with the Raiders this season.
Yeah, the Raiders just look poverty this season.
Yeah, Devontae Adams must be really regretting signing for them.
Yeah. Uh, the Cowboys and the Packers. I think this
What
was.
is with the Cowboys losing to the
I was gonna
Packers?
say Aaron Rodgers just has a thing for beating the
Is
Cowboys.
this just a like constant in life, death taxes, and the Cowboys losing to the Packers?
I think it might be because Aaron Rodgers just loves beating the Cowboys every single season.
I mean, Tony Pollard had a great game.
They're another team who
20
sold.
Yeah,
They were up by 14 in the
Dak,
fourth quarter. Did you see
yeah,
the
Dak
stat where
threw.
they were like 165-0 when leading in the fourth quarter by by 14 plus points? It's like, oh well, now 150 165-1 or whatever.
Yeah,
Uh,
Jack threw two picks down the stretch. I mean, if you look at these offensive stats, you wouldn't expect for the Packers to win because the passing stats aren't exactly jumping out at you. He did throw three touchdowns, but he only threw the ball 20 times.
Christian
So,
Watson came on in this game.
yeah, Aaron Jones had a big game as well. So I was shocked that that happened.
So was I.
I'm happy it did, but I just think it's a
Yeah.
little shocking.
Cardinals beat the Rams. Two
The
backup quarterbacks.
Rams,
All I gotta say, Trace McSorley is goaded. No, but it was two backup quarterbacks. I think this was a really poor.
Colt McCoy versus John Wolford.
Yeah, it was not a great game. Not one that I was like, oh, I can't wait to watch that. John Wolford, a former AAF quarterback, for the Arizona Hotshots, but yeah, it was definitely a bad game that I definitely did not want to look at. I saw it a little bit as I was watching Red Zone, but I definitely was not like, oh, gonna tune into that. Chargers in their first of two straight Sunday night football games fall to San Fran. This is the only game we picked separately. You picked San Fran, I picked the Chargers. San Fran comes out on top 22-16. Now, I didn't get to see much of this game, but I heard McCaffrey had a decent game. I was driving home while this game was happening, but McCaffrey is a yak merchant. 4 receptions for 39 yards, just under 10 yards per reception, and then another
Yeah.
38 yards rushing.
Yeah, this is just the 49ers win to me. Garoppolo didn't throw a touchdown. They had two running backs who had decent games. Debo had a decent, well, not a decent game, but he was there.
He was
Elijah Mitchell had 18 carries for 89 yards. McCaffrey 14 for 38. Debo 4 for 27. So a
and
decent 49ers game. The defense played as good as they needed to, and the Chargers continue to disappoint.
the San Fran also did a pretty good job with the possession, 37 to 23 minutes, which just going right on into the next game. Time of possession, obviously a huge factor of the game. This is okay. I don't want to talk too much about this because I think we have a lot to talk about in the actual podcast. So if you guys want to hear us actually get into depth with this game, look up Brotherly Love in the District on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. But this is one where time of possession, the Washington doubled up the Eagles. All I'll say, going before we talk about it tomorrow, is I'm not entirely angry that they lost this game, that the Eagles lost this game. So it was a very sloppy game. I don't think it's that much that the Commanders outplayed the Eagles. I think it was more the Eagles shot themselves in the foot. I think is more of what happened. Again, I'm not mad at it.
Um, for me, it depends on. I think in certain areas we outplayed you. Like I think our offensive line outplayed you in terms of you weren't able to get really run stops, and when we did have passing plays, you guys didn't really get enough pressure. But in terms of shooting yourself in the foot, your turnovers, I think, really hurt you because up till that point, you only had 3 turnovers in the entire season, and then you had 3 and 4 in that game.
Yeah.
One of which I'll agree was with from one of the worst like missed calls I think I've ever seen. That's one of the most obvious face masks.
And there was a ref standing right there. But...
Remember that one where I think it was against the Eagles where the guy had the helmet?
It was the Eagles. It was Miles Sanders in his rookie season. Yeah. I believe it was week
Wasn't
4
it the Dolphins?
No, it was the Lions. Because, dude, I remember watching this. I remember watching this game like so clearly. Miles Sanders was returning a kick, and it was probably a backup linebacker or a third-string linebacker for the Lions on the kickoff. Comes, grabs Sanders' face mask, spins his neck all the way around. His headband shot 10 yards down the field from the helmet flying off. It was such a missed face mask. I don't know how it happened, but
yeah, this one was pretty bad too. He shoved it like into where the eyes would be. Jamin Davis completely grabbed it. It led to a fumble. I mean, I'm not complaining. I do think it was big, but I don't think it's as big because you guys got the ball 3 times after that. But
yeah, I agree. So, but like I said,
it's overall a sloppy game.
I don't want to get too far into it.
I don't think I've ever said this. It's actually a great game plan by Scott Turner. I promise I'll never say that again because it won't happen again. But yeah, a great win for Washington. McLaurin made Darius Slay look stupid in man-to-man coverage, but
McLaurin is the only receiver this season to have more than 100 yards on the Eagles.
Yeah.
He has 2 games over 100 yards on the Eagles, so he has definitely made Darius Slay's life hell in those games. I think we're ready to move on to week 11, correct? So ending off this week, you are 59-44. I am 56-47. You had 1 game over me. 6-8. I was 5-9. Poor week. I think there was a lot of upsets. So, going into this week, so Thursday Night Football tonight. Titans at Green Bay. I think I got to pick the Titans here. I don't really see Green Bay. Despite coming off a big win, the Titans are not the Cowboys. I don't see Aaron Rodgers going crazy.
Yeah. I just feel like the Packers coming off of last week, I think they'll do better, but I'm not sure they will, so I'm going to stick with the Titans because it seems like their offenses look two-dimensional again, even without a really good number 1 wide receiver, so I have to go with the Titans.
Going to Chicago at Atlanta. I feel like Atlanta's going to struggle with Justin Fields' running ability.
Yeah, and considering that the Panthers ran all over the Falcons, I have to go with the Bears.
I agree. All right, Philadelphia at Indianapolis. This is one big piece that I'll address right now too, and we'll go more in depth in the actual podcast, but if they do not find a way to shut down Jonathan Taylor, the Colts are winning this game, but they did address the fact that they want to shut down Jonathan Taylor with the signing of Linval Joseph. So I think they should win this game. If they do, if they can get out at the start and maybe shut down the Colts offense once or twice and then score on offense, that's going to be huge. I also think this is a game where they are going to come out pissed. The game they played against Washington was terrible. This is one where the coaching staff is going to, be killing the team for the game they played. I think Philadelphia should come out and kill Indy. but I think Jonathan Taylor is a very big piece to this game.
Yeah, because if like the Colts are going to have to look at last week and think, okay, I mean that's the track record to beat the
And the
Eagles.
week before that, Damian Pierce
Yeah,
ran all over the Eagles too.
yeah, like dominate time of possession, and without Jordan Davis, they were really going to struggle. So I think multiple teams are going to look at this and say, oh, I think this is how you beat the Eagles, and you have a game against the Titans coming up as well.
Yeah. And Green Bay also is really big into their run
Yeah,
game.
Aaron
So.
Jones too. So I think this has got to be the biggest tests. Like these are going to be the biggest tests of your team that we're going to see throughout the entire season because how much you've struggled with the run game throughout the season. Even in your wins, like you saw the teams that succeeded against you guys had a really really good run game. So I think it's going to be a close game, but I think you guys are going to pull it out because I don't think you'll make as many turnovers as you did last week.
All right. New York Jets at the New England Patriots. Last time they met up, the Jets lost to New England, actually. You picked New England in that game. I remember that. I picked the Jets. I'm going to go with the Jets again. They beat the Bills. I believe they're coming off of a bye week, if I recall correctly. So, yes, they are coming off of a bye week. So, I'm gonna go with the Jets in this one. All right, you said the Jets too?
Yep.
All right, Washington at Houston. This is going to be a running game. This is going to be a quick game because there's going to be a lot of the ball being run.
Yeah, I think that we're going to try. I mean, we saw the Giants had success against the Titans with running. So I think we won't have as many rushing yards, but we do have a better wide receiver core. So I think that the offense is just going to be too much for the Texans. And Chase Young's coming back this game. I think our defense will be able to stop them enough.
Who is the Texans' win?
That
Oh,
is
it's
an
against the
excellent question.
Jaguars.
Yeah.
I'm also going with Washington. Derek Stingley's a good corner, but I think Terry McLaurin should have a big day. There's a lot of weapons that Houston has to account for on the Washington offense
Yeah.
with Jahan Dotson back.
Samuel and Dotson.
Yeah, with Jahan Dotson back, there's a lot to focus on. And then, like you said, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, defensive line should have a big day. LA at the Saints. I don't even know who will win this game because this is
I don't
such
either.
a
I'm going to go with the
piss poor
Saints
matchup.
purely for the fact they're still going to have their starter. And the Rams have just looked awful this season compared to what they did last season. So I'm going to go with the Saints. And aren't the Rams going to be missing Cooper Kupp?
Yes, Cooper Kupp's on IR with a high ankle sprain.
Yeah, so I got to go with the Saints.
Honestly, I think I'm gonna pick the Rams. Matthew Stafford should be back this week. They have personally, I watch the Rams and I get mixed up with this guy all the time. Ben Skowronek, picking up for Cooper Kupp, and I mean he's not terrible. So, but I think the Rams are due for a win and playing definitely a lesser team who's not in their division. Just a team that they can go out and have no stress against. I'm going to pick the Rams to win this one. The Browns at the Bills. I'm picking the Bills less in the fact that they should win this game and more in the fact that they need to win this game.
Yeah.
This is a bounce back game that they need, and I'm picking them because I feel like this is a game they need more than a game that I think they'll actually win. Although I think they'll win based off skill, but they need it, and that's more what I'm picking off of. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the one, but I'm more interested in the snow situation that's going on. Currently, Buffalo's getting a big snowstorm, so if they do play in Buffalo, it's going to be
It is
a
in
complete.
Buffalo.
Yeah, it's going to be a whiteout, but there's a contingency plan where they might move it because the amount of snow they're going to get, it's going to be in like feet.
That's boo. I went to a Bills game while it was snowing. It was cold as hell, but it was awesome. So are you picking Buffalo or Cleveland?
Buffalo.
All right, Carolina at the Ravens. I think
Ravens.
Ravens should win this one easily. Not much to go off. Not much to talk about there. This one, I think it could be a sneaky, interesting game. The Lions at the Giants.
Yeah, I think I think this is going to be a very close game, but I still trust the Giants because their defense has been pretty decent this year. I mean,
I agree with that. I think the Giants defense is going to be the deciding factor in this game, and the fact that they have a better defense than Detroit's defense, I feel like they should be able to pull it out. Uh, Raiders at Denver. The I
Broncos country, let's ride.
I think the Broncos barely beat the Raiders the last time they played.
Yeah, but I just have a feeling that Vegas is in a really
Isn't a rut.
dark state right now. They just fired Josh McDaniel. I mean, that could be weird though because we've seen interim head coaches come in, like new head coaches
For
come in
example,
this
the Raiders head
season.
coach last season, their interim head coach.
Yeah, Jeff Saturday did it this year. The Panthers guy did it this year, so they could win. I mean, I have a really horrible feeling they're going to, but I just trust the Broncos a little bit more because they have such a great defense.
So I didn't realize that Las Vegas fired. I did, but it didn't click in my head. I'm gonna pick the Raiders in that game because
Because of
I
the-
firmly believe that the Raiders have a good team and they are just struggling. So I'm gonna pick the Raiders. I mean, it's a division matchup. Those are always tough. You can never be too
Yeah.
safe. Obviously, you saw that with the Washington Eagles game. I'm gonna pick the Raiders in this one. All right. So your game of the week, if you care to explain why you're choosing that, but Baltimore, or excuse me, Dallas visit the Vikings. So if you care to explain it, I'll let you go through and do your
I just think,
explanation.
I mean, they're two very potent offenses, and we've seen that both their defenses, I think, are supposed to be decent, but we've seen in the past few weeks they really haven't done that. So I just think this is going to be an interesting game because the Vikings, they have a lot of momentum going. After they just beat the Bills and the Commanders game, I just think this team is kind of starting to really rally around Kirk Cousins, and for me, it should be interesting to see how the Cowboys bounce back from last week because I think they're going to want to be very hungry for a win considering how close this division is. So, I'm gonna pick the Vikings to win in a very close game.
I see what you're saying. I think I feel like Minnesota is a. This isn't in prime time. I think it's going to be a 4:30 game, which means
Yeah, so Kirk Cousins should thrive.
Kirk Cousins should be decent. They Dallas. I mean, yes, they have a good defense, but you've seen them have weaknesses. The Trayvon Diggs is not good enough to cover Justin Jefferson. He's going to have a day. They have a really good. They have a really good receiving core in general. I think, and now that they've had time for the offensive line to mesh, I feel like that's going to help them a lot. So I'm going to pick Minnesota over Dallas in this one. The Bengals at Pittsburgh. I think this is one we both can agree Cincinnati should just walk around Pittsburgh in this game.
Didn't Pittsburgh win the previous game with these two?
I think this was actually a week one matchup where the
Oh yeah, where the Pittsburgh almost won. I thought.
maybe it was last season that I was thinking of where
No, they definitely played
no,
week
it
one.
was this season because it was this season week one. I want to say Joe Burrow threw like 4 interceptions. Yeah,
Yeah,
Joe
he
Burrow
did,
threw
didn't
4.
he?
Yeah, Joe Burrow needs a
Yeah, no, the
revenge game.
Steelers won that game in overtime.
I'm picking Cincinnati in this. Joe Shiesty is going to make his comeback in this game.
I'm probably going to do something really stupid here, Tristan.
It worked when you picked him over Tampa. I mean,
I gotta go. I'm gonna go with the Steelers.
now that right there is really scary because Pittsburgh picking a team to sweep another team when that team's really bad, that is ballsy.
They have T.J. Watt back though.
That's fair. And Cincinnati does have a really bad offensive line.
Yeah, it's awful.
But that's an interesting pick. I'm excited to watch that game a little bit now. All right, and now for my game of the week. I think this is one that you can count on anytime they play. Patrick Mahomes against Justin Herbert, the Chiefs at Chargers, Sunday Night Football, which got moved. It was actually the Bengals at the Steelers, and they switched them. So, Chiefs at the Chargers, Justin Herbert against Patrick Mahomes is always a game to watch. Last time they played, it was a Thursday Night Football game, and it was a close game all the way up until the end. And Justin Herbert ended up finishing out that game with cracked ribs. Like, that these two are teams that are going to be going at each other for years to come, and it's going to be a really fun rivalry to watch because obviously Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert are both young. It's going to be fun. I think this is going to be a really big passing game. Both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are supposed to be back this week, so Justin Herbert should have his full arsenal of weapons. Isaiah Pacheco is starting to stand out with the Chiefs, so the Chiefs might have a more open pass front. I mean, this is just going to be a high scoring game, I think. I mean, the Chiefs look really good with Kadarius Toney too. I'm excited.
I think the Chiefs are going to score a lot of points, but I think from what we saw last week from the Chargers, I think that struggle will continue a little bit. They'll be a little bit better considering they're getting back Williams and Keenan Allen, but I think there's going to still be an adjustment period for the offense. So that's why I didn't choose this game as the game of the week, is because I just don't trust the Chargers enough yet.
I feel like how when you play, when you play certain people, you kind of get amped up about it. I feel like this is one of those games where even if you're not a good team, even if you're not playing well, this is that game where you're like, oh my gosh, we're playing Kansas City, like they're amped. I feel like this is a game where even if you're not playing great, this is a game where you're excited to play and you just play better than you do for at any other point in the season. So that's why I think the Chargers are going to win it. I think Justin Herbert is going to come out, and I think they're going to win. I think the Chargers defense is better than it. It comes down to the fact that I think the Chargers defense has a better chance of bending and not breaking than the Chiefs defense. And I mean, look, I'm not saying the Chargers are going to win with a ton of optimism and like feeling strong about it. I just think it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a high scoring game. The Chiefs won the first matchup. They're in LA. I think it's going to be a close game. And I mean, LA isn't exactly the best place to have a home field advantage, but I mean, I think it could go either way, and I think the Chargers could win. I personally really love the Chargers and the Chiefs. I don't know why, but recently just watching them, they're two really good offenses. They're fun to watch, so I do really like it, and I can't really say that I like one more than the other, but I think this is going to be a fun game. I just think that the Chargers, I don't know. I feel like they're going to pull it out.
I've just been so unimpressed with the Chargers this season.
And I agree.
I just can't really see their defense stopping Patrick Mahomes enough.
I see what you're saying, but it's going to be an interesting game to watch. That one I am excited to watch. And the last Monday Night Football, San Fran at Arizona. I think San Fran should just...
Yeah, I know the Cardinals are starting the man Chase McSorley, most likely, but, I mean, I have to
throw it on a dime. Like, y'all, you're trying. You've ever heard the Trace McSorley meme song?
You played it for me.
Oh, did I? Yeah, I mean, I think...
After he got in that game against the Browns when he was with the Ravens, I'm like, okay, why is everybody losing their crap over this guy?
Yeah, he went to a high school around us. He went to Briar Woods.
Yeah, which is like 40 or 30 minutes away.
Which is pretty cool, but... And he killed Woodgrove when he played him, so...
that's to be expected.
I think he ran for like 4 touchdowns when he played us. But yeah, I think San Fran should easily win this. Even with the GOAT, Trace McSorley starting, I think it's
Christian McCaffrey should have the field day.
All right, so that's going to close it out for this week. If you guys want to listen to our podcast, it's Brotherly Love in the District, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you guys find your podcasts. I am going to be posting quite a bit of stuff upcoming on Instagram and TikTok with a couple big Eagles signings, so look out for that stuff on there. All that stuff is right here.
One of which happened in the last 30 minutes.
While we were talking here, so that's going to be if you guys want to see that, I am going to be posting that stuff soon. So go check that stuff out on Instagram and TikTok. And then if you guys want to email us questions or comments that we can talk about in the show, blinthedc@gmail.com. And with that, you guys can come back weekly for this show, and we are going to end it off there. So we will see you guys next week.
See you later.